Hey, did you see that little teaser trailer for Punisher One Last Kill, the big Disney Plus special that's going to be hitting sooner rather than later? I know I did, and I also know I've been riding super high since I saw the Punisher show up in the trailer for Spider-Man Brand New Day. Between everything I just mentioned and the brand new Benjamin Percy solo series going on in the comics right now, I think it's fair to say Franken-Castle is about to have one of his biggest years in history, and because of that, I thought, hey, you know what would be fun? This Friday we should do something we haven't done for a little bit. Let's do another big visual history. So sit back, relax, everyone. We're going to be looking at the history of Punisher's costumes in comics, how they've evolved, how they've changed, give a little insight, give a little backstory, rate them, talk about which one's my favorite, and yeah, that's basically what we're going to do, so let's do it. So, obviously, if we're talking about Punisher costumes, we gotta go back to the very beginning, 1974, when Franken-Castle made his big debut in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man. It's so funny to look back and think that the Punisher originally was just meant to be a villain of the week, just a mook for the Jackal sent to go kill Spider-Man, and yet throughout the course of that story, Jerry Conway and company thought to themselves, you know what, maybe this guy's a little bit more depth, maybe he has a little bit more going on, maybe he should actually turn against the Jackal by the end of the story, and it is kind of cool when we look at this issue here, when we see how much of, what would go on to define the Punisher is still pretty true to the costume when it started. I have to wonder if the fact that the character was so visually striking was a big, contributing factor into why Conway thought this dude should stick around. I know there's actually old sketches you can find from around this time in, Punisher documentaries and DVD special features and everything, where they didn't even settle on the name Punisher right away. They toyed around with the Executioner and the Grim Reaper, which might explain why he even adopted the skull in the first place. It would be a very long time until we discovered, why the skull is the way it is. And even then, I feel like writers and everyone keep changing what the skull truly means. The suit itself is slick. It's cool. You can't go wrong with black and white. It looks really, really solid. Now, what's funny is that Punisher on the cover of this issue, which is, a really, really excellent, maybe one of the most iconic Marvel covers where, he's, lining Spider-Man up in his sights and everything. He has the white on the glove and the boots in the cover, but he does not have it here in the actual issue itself. Here it's all black. It's almost none more black. It's as black can get here, with like a little bluish tint, which they'll also screw around with later. It is pretty solid. It's pretty solid. You'll definitely remember this guy. But there will be iterations on this. This is not the best. The skull itself is kind of bigger and a little cartoony. They haven't quite figured out what that's going to be yet. And even Punisher isn't safe from, the superhero jocks thing, which are all the rage in this era. But yeah, I would say for historical context, for being, the face that launched all these ships and everything, we got to at least give this one an A. There was definitely something here. They definitely, tapped into some sort of zeitgeist here at the very beginning, and it would only get better as time went on. So I think we got to put this one in the A tier. Now, one of the things that is really interesting about the Punisher when it comes to his costumes is that he really doesn't change that much over the first couple, decades of his publication history. He kind of sticks with what he has and what works. It's not until, around the 1980s when we start getting, into more, minis and, when he eventually will get his own solo series, do they start actually making bigger changes to the costume. Now, the white is a lot more prominent, a lot more present. They have decided that, yes, the teeth on the skull are indeed ammo. Sometimes he just has the ammo pouches on the skull. Sometimes it's just a skull, sometimes it's armor, and then sometimes he actually has the bandolier. This one has a combination of both, and he actually has a pistol holster on the side in pure stark white. I believe that this is probably the version of the character when people think of, this is the one that comes to mind more than just about anyone else. The black bodysuit era, I guess we could call this one. And again, it's pretty cool, it's pretty fresh, it's pretty striking. You can see why it worked the way it did for as long as it did. I would say, too, when we think of Punisher, as a superhero, or, at least as a comic character, this is the one that comes to mind. This is the peak comic character version of the character, and I think this one is a little hard to mess with, which is why I think this one, I would actually put this one above A. I think I would actually put this one in S, and it's hard to believe that, the character so early in his visual history already kind of hit an S, already hit, oh, this is iconic now. this is a face that, will always move merchandise, a logo that will move merchandise, because that's the other thing about the Punisher. He's not just an incredibly powerful design, he's an incredibly powerful logo, a logo that, has had its good years and its bad years, too, especially, if we talk about, the real world connotation, where, some of the worst actors out there have decided to try and co-opt the skull for themselves, what it means, and because of that, you need scenes like in the Daredevil TV show, where they literally look directly at the audience and say, hey, if you are using the skull in this context, you are a fucking clown. And I can't believe we needed to say that, but I'm glad that, the company that took the stand, very publicly where people would see it. But yeah, this suit, I would say, would probably be S tier. Yeah, I don't think it gets much better than this. This is the Punisher that comes to mind when people think about the character. This is the one that will also stand for a very long amount of time, as I will explain. Now, the costume will also evolve a little bit as we head further on into the 80s. Again, he will add more paramilitary stuff, more straps, more pouches, more belts, bigger guns. We are getting closer to the 90s. The Punisher has always been something of an action hero, action movie pastiche, so it only kind of makes sense that the character would, start incorporating more of that into his actual look. More than anything, though, what this particular version here does, which, with pencils by Jim Lee, of all things, there is that the headband, he incorporates a headband into his look that he never had before, and it's a headband that, will continue to crop up in weirdly specific ways. This isn't even my favorite version of the headband, or I think the most important version of the headband. I think we can all agree the most important version of Headband Punisher is actually from Spider-Man the Animated Series, and what a weird version that character is, where he's got the trench coat, but it's gray, he has a skull shirt, but it's aqua instead of black. What an absolutely weird combination of so many things. But you know what? This is also very important, because this is the version of the character and I think a lot of people my age ended up seeing, and even though he looks a little weird and a little out of place now and like a relic of times gone by, it clearly worked. It was clearly effective to people our age. The character clearly stuck in our brains, and when we became comic readers, we wanted to know more about the Punisher. I would probably put the Amazing Spider-Man headband version, I'd probably give that a B. I don't think a lot of people are, as nostalgic about this in a, he should definitely bring this back in the comics kind of way. More in a, that's kind of fun kind of way. Like, if he came and showed up in, X-Men 97 Season 2 wearing this, I think people would have a good chuckle. The other headband version, I guess we could give that at least a B+. I think it certainly has its place. It's definitely got that Rambo vibe, that Rambo flavor, which, given Frank-Castle's status as a military vet, as a guy whose story is very tragic in the way First Blood kind of is, I could see, that visual connection and that visual history actually, being kind of potent. But yeah, B+ is where I would put the two different headband looks, if I'm being serious. Now, 1992, as you might have guessed, things really start popping off for the Punisher. This is the era of the anti-hero. This is the era of grim and gritty, and who better suited to take on that era than Frank-Castle himself? We, of course, have the now equally as iconic cover of Punisher Warzone #1. I would say this is probably as iconic as that Spider-Man cover that I mentioned before. He's wearing the trench coat. His mouth is agape. He's shooting into the camera. Even that second season of that Punisher show more or less tried to recreate this shot, and the big difference this time is, hey, he's bigger, he's bulkier, and he now has a trench coat now, which I believe he had worn the trench coat previously. I actually tried to nail down, hey, when was the first time the Punisher ever wore a trench coat in the stories? I think he usually did, as more of just a way to kind of shield himself, but now the trench coat is officially a selling point. It is officially part of the costume itself, and man, what a great addition it is, right? Because, who doesn't look cool in a trench coat? A trench coat just looks awesome in this context. It's pure action hero. It's pure cinema, as the children say, and yeah, this is a great look. In fact, we even got an even better, bigger version of this piece of art where you can see him shooting all over the place. And also we can see that this is a very particular type of trench coat too. It's less detective and more Wild West duster because it's got the kind of like shouldery flaps on it, and he's got his collar upturned all the way there. We also see the ammo belts are now black instead of white. The skull is bigger. The skull will shift up and down in size a ton as time goes on. You know, the skull, artists really have a field day with how big the skull should look. I feel, again, for historical context, for kind of evolving it to the next level, I feel like this one should at least be an A tier. At least, you know, this image is a powerful image. The Warzone run was very important to Frank as a character. I think it changed a lot of perceptions and, again, helped solidify what the character looked like in comic culture and the collective subconscious. So I think with that, it definitely earns its A slot. Now, hey, you didn't think I was going to stick solely to comic books, did I? Well, I kinda did, but I put some fun little side pieces in here for the Punisher. Here's the 1992 arcade Punisher game with Nick Fury. I know if you're my age, you probably spent a lot of time playing this one, too. Probably a lot of time losing, too, because it's a pretty hard game. This is an interesting look for the Punisher. Obviously, it's done in that kind of Capcom anime style. It's a very cool, very interesting artistic render of him, but more than anything, hey, brown trench coat. I don't think he would ever wear the brown trench coat before or after. There's this piece here that's obviously the big showy piece, you know, where the skull is, you know, very, very well rendered. I think here the skull is the perfect size because you can see the whole thing within the coat itself. It's not, you know, covered up in the way that we'll see it later on down the line. Just a particularly interesting image, this one here. There's this one, and then there's the one from the actual game itself, from the select screen, where he's kind of staring down the barrel. This is an image that, surprisingly, it comes from an old arcade game, and yet it has lived side by side with the comic art for so long, to the point that when I was researching this video, I actually forgot, like, oh man, this was from a game, wasn't it? This wasn't from a comic, but it's so cool, and, you know, you feel like it probably could be. Yeah, this is a solid one. I would put this one at B. I think this is an important one for, you know, just for the history of the character. Again, I don't think, you know, it particularly tops anything from the comics, but I think it lives very well in its own little space there, and it shows that, hey, the character of the Punisher can be very successful even outside just the realm of comic books. Hey, you know, big ups for multimedia. Now, 1993, of course, we get Punisher 2099. It's not Frank-Castle, it's a completely different guy. I almost didn't include it, but I know we really can't do a comprehensive list talking about, you know, Punisher's visual history and all of the different costumes if we do not end up including this one. And oh man, how 90s is this? I mean, the Punisher has always been 90s in idea, even though he's a character from the 80s, but holy shit, this is loud, this is over the top, this is gaudy. I keep going back on this one. There are long periods of time, long stretches of time where I hated it and I thought, you know, it represented some of the absolute worst, you know, overindulgences in the art of the era. But as time goes on, maybe I'm just becoming an old man. Maybe my heart is being softened. I'm kind of coming around to it. I know they kind of did an updated version of this costume not too long ago where he has a mask, and oh man, I'm going to get into, you know, what I think about Punisher wearing a mask. This is, I mean, this is cheese, but, you know, like cheese, it has aged well. It has aged like a fine wine. I probably would have put it in F tier before, but now I think it actually maybe deserves a place at C, maybe even C+. I know that might get under some people's skin. I know people really love Punisher 99 and, you know, 2099, and I'm not going to yuck your yum or anything. Like I said, I have come around to it. It is over the top. It is extreme. It is, you know, just absolutely eye-blinding in its way, but damn if it doesn't make a statement, and damn if, you know, once you see it, it would be impossible for you to ever forget it. I know I can't forget it. It's burned its way into my mind, and I will be continuing to think about it long after this video is done. It is doing the whole high-tech thing. It doesn't really, you know, go that far off and that different from mainline Punisher's costume. It's just, it's a little bit more jagged, a little bit more pointy. The guns are bigger. He has spikes. it's funny. It evolves the concept, but honestly, not by all that much. The guns are high tech and futury. They look almost a little Han Solo-y, but beyond that, there's not much of a difference between this and the original Punisher suit, where, obviously with like Spider-Man 2099, that was a massive departure. This isn't that big a departure, which is why, again, I think I feel comfortable putting this at C, maybe even C+ if I'm feeling particularly good. Now, as 1994 rolls around, we get ourselves an Elseworlds Punisher. We get a man named Frank, and it's literally just the Punisher if he was a cowboy. It's the Punisher if he's a cowboy. They just put a different type of duster coat on him, a cowboy hat, Wild West gloves, and jeans, very, very prominent blue jeans that clash a lot with the black shirt. This is actually probably the best, this image I pulled up here, this is the best it actually looks in the story itself. All the other covers look kind of crappy. I have never liked this one. It should have been so easy to, Wild Westify the Punisher, because so much of his story is film noir, it is spaghetti western, but no, I have never liked the way this one looks. I think it is lazy. I don't think it does anything particularly well, but here's the crazy thing. There is another cowboy Punisher out there that exists that is actually way, way goddamn better. Of course, I am talking about Pastor Franken-Castle from Secret Wars. This is from that 1872 Wild West mini that they did. I do believe that this actual page where Pastor Frank and Deadpool, their Wild West versions, show up, I don't think this is actually in the collection anymore. I think they took this out because it was very clear sequel baiting to a story that they couldn't actually do a sequel to because they rewrote the universe anyway. I love the Pastor Frank version. I think this one is so freaking awesome. I love that his priest clothes are the black and the white of the skull. I love that he's got a Bible in one hand, a gun in the other. I love his preacher hat is all tore up, implying a history. This is awesome. I wanted so badly to learn more about these two characters, the fact that they came to town to avenge Sheriff Steve Rogers, but that we never, ever got a proper follow-up. Still sticks in my craw to this day. Of all the stories we got sequels to, we never got a sequel to this one. Man Named Frank, I would put that one in Detour. Do not like that one at all. But Pastor Frank from Secret Wars, that gets an A tier from me. In fact, I almost want to put it in S tier, but I know not everybody loves Westerns as much as I do. But this is a great redesign. I am all about this one. And hey, if you haven't read that 1872 book, you should definitely check it out because it's great. And yeah, maybe see if this one is, this last page here is still in the collection or not, or if I just, half heard a rumor and I'm talking out the side of my neck, so, we'll see for certain. Now, 1998, we get something radically different. We get the Punisher Purgatory. What if Franken-Castle was an avenging angel with guns made of fire and a symbol on his forehead and everything? Yeah, this is no one's particularly favorite era of the Punisher, and yet surprisingly, this will be the first but not the last time that they experiment putting the Punisher in more magical, far-out situations. Here it was a lot to swallow. Here it felt, very derivative of your Spawns and your Ghost Riders and your Spectres and everything like that. I don't think anybody wanted a paranormal Punisher at this point in history. This one did not do it for people. This is widely considered to be one of the lowest points of the character, wherein they would need to do a major reboot and overhaul right after. Looking at the costume now, that's the other really disappointing thing about it. They're doing all this crazy stuff, but the suit is basically exactly the same as it's always been. In fact, he is just wearing, the shirt and, a trench coat now. They've kind of dropped a lot of the armor. He's being a lot more casual, again, because he has supernatural powers now, so he doesn't need to worry about protecting himself all that much. He's got the big glowy eyes, the symbol on his head, the coat is more tattered now, but yeah, this is no one's favorite. For plenty of reasons. This is a very good rendering of this costume from what was a pretty bad era. I will be nice and give this one at least a C, maybe a C-. Maybe the story doesn't hold up, but maybe they had the right idea that, to evolve Frank as a character, we can put him in different situations that just aren't, your gritty crime street stories. Maybe he can do more, and he would do more. It's just this wasn't the way to do it. Now, while Magical Punisher went over more or less like a fart in church, it did lead to what many people, myself included, consider to be probably the greatest Punisher run of all time creatively. Of course, I'm talking about the Marvel Knights Garth Ennis era, specifically the Marvel Knights era. We'll get to Max later on, but yes, they brought the character back. They brought him back to basics with the story Welcome Back, Frank. And the costume itself is... well, here's where I'm kind of conflicted, because, I mean, what do we say about the costume that we haven't already said before? It's just the old costume again. They just brought him back, they slimmed it down, they make it look, a little bit more realistic, I guess a little bit more, tangible and lived in, as is Steve Dillon's artwork. I mean, obviously people talk a lot about what Garth Ennis brought to the Punisher as a character, and obviously that's very important, but I think, Steve Dillon also deserves a lot of a lot of credit for the character he brought via artwork, specifically the very human, very ugliness that he brought to all of it. Dillon was very good at drawing people who looked like real people, and, sometimes they were fucked up, and they were deformed, and they were, ugly, and, the stories that Ennis were telling at the time were very ugly, and, they were kind of, peanut butter and jelly and very simpatico here. I mean, I'm trying not to let my own personal nostalgia kind of blur me on this one, where it's like, yeah, the suit is really good, but it's also the suit we've kind of seen before. It's not really doing anything different. It's not really evolving anything, even though the stories are, again, very damn important, and, they would completely, creatively refresh the character in a big, bad way. I mean... I want to put it in A, but I feel like you didn't do much. You just, it's like Malibu Stacy. It's like, but she's got a new hat, though, right? But he doesn't even have a new hat. It's the old hat that we liked before that we just went back to. Personally, I would put it in A because, I'm just a soft lay for all of this material, even though maybe realistically it should be more of a B or a B plus even, because it's like you didn't do much. You copied someone else's work, even if you did a really good job of it. It doesn't do that much that's different, but they will innovate later on, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now, also, if we're talking about Punisher looks from Marvel Knights and from the 2000s, we, of course, got to talk about the Tim Bradstreet covers for the Punisher. These were huge. These was a big reason that, the Punisher had this major resurgence that he did, because basically Bradstreet said, hey, what if we drew every issue? What if every cover looked like a #1? What a novel concept, right? What a crazy idea. What if we threw everything at it and gave 110 every time for the cover? And yeah, these covers look freaking awesome. Also, there is a version of the Punisher and the Punisher costume that seemingly only really exists in these covers, or at least exists, to my mind, more prominently on these covers. Of course, it's the one you're looking at right now, where the shirt is kind of blue and the skull has been completely reimagined now to where it's all very long in the front and very, like, mushroomy, very bulbousy on top. This has never been one of my favorites. I always thought it was kind of weird when I saw this, and I never hear anyone talk about this particular look. I never hear anyone clamor for this look to be like, oh, this should be in a video game. Oh, this should be in the movies. This should be in the Netflix show or something. I never see people particularly love this one, but it is an important part of the, Punisher's visual history. That's what we're here to talk about. Big up on Bradstreet for trying new things. I don't know what he's exactly trying to say here with this image. Again, maybe just trying, update it for the 2000s. Maybe it's like, oh, it should look a little different. If it is just a shirt, maybe we can have it look like anything. Which also begs the question, where the hell does the Punisher actually get his skull shirts from? Does he just have a guy at the mall who is forever screen printing them for him over and over? Does he have his own shirt press at home? Does he make them? Does he have a TeePublic store in which he orders them from? Also, the origin for the skull is also always changing. Oh, sometimes, it's a death's head, it's an omen left over from the war that Franken-Castle brought home with him. Oh, sometimes it just looks cool and is meant to draw fire. Oh, sometimes it's an X-ray of his head, and sometimes it is, well, we'll get to that when we get to it. But this one, I would put this one in C tier. It's not terrible, but again, I don't think it's anyone's favorite. It looks great because Bradstreet is doing it. I think if anyone else did it, it would look really bad. But, props to that man. Got to give him all his flowers for the role he played in helping, breathe fresh life into Franken-Castle, into the Punisher in this era. Now, another important costume we got to talk about, around 2003, we get Punisher Born, the big Vietnam-era origin story for Marvel Knights and Max and everything else there. Again, it's another Ennis joint. The costume itself is, well, it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's Franken-Castle, but in the Vietnam War. It almost kind of defies the costume label, because it's not a costume, it's a uniform, which I think is actually fairly accurate to the uniforms of the time, because I know Ennis cares a lot about, you know, gun history and war history and everything, so he very much got to play with his own hyperfixation in this one. I mean, it's cool. Frank looks cool in it and everything, but, you know, I almost struggle to call it a costume. It's funny, usually, like, once a run or once a story, we usually do get paramilitary Frank. We usually do get him in some sort of, you know, military fatigues doing his thing. I know the PS2 video game had a whole segment there where he actually painted his face in the actual skull makeup. I think that's what this is missing here. This is missing some face paint. It's not bad, but, you know, it feels like the odd man out when we're talking about costumes, which is why I think I can maybe only give this one a C. Maybe a C+. I know it does have an important place in the Ennis years, and in fact, Ennis would, you know, revisit this era of Frank in Vietnam multiple times over, so this one definitely gets its due, especially if you've been reading Punisher for a very long time. But yeah, I feel comfortable giving this one a C. Now, with that, we come to what I think many, myself included, will agree is the big one. Punisher 2004, Punisher Max. It's like Marvel Knights, but even more violent, and even more adult, and even more Ennis at his most Ennis-y. And the update for the costume, really, you know, it updated it by kind of moving backwards. Now there's less armor. Now there's even less, you know, superhero pomp and circumstance about it. He is a guy. He is a guy in a t-shirt with, you know, with a jacket. Sometimes a trench coat. This actually looks to be a little smaller than a trench coat. It looks to just be a regular jacket. More than anything, though, I think where the Punisher changes here is that he is older. Franken-Castle is an older man now. He is feeling every bit of his age as a Vietnam vet. He is beefy. He's got creases. He's got lines. He's got battle scars and everything. The skull has undergone a bit of a change, which again will also kind of go back and forth depending on who's drawing it at the time. This is probably one of the more iconic images of the early Max line, and I think it's an image a lot of people remember. This just works for me. This works from top to bottom. I think this is Frank at his most primal. This is a man who is not a superhero. He is a vigilante, you know. He is an uncaged animal driven by rage. He doesn't need body armor. He doesn't need all of those, you know, tricks and, you know, all the other accoutrements that, you know, define some of his older costumes. He is just a man on a mission here, and I think that's why this era and this, you know, look especially resonates with so many people as hard as it does. I know I put a poll out to my audience on Tuesday what their favorite version of the Punisher costume is, and almost universally, this is what people came back with. It was a toss-up between this and, you know, the black bodysuit, black armor era, but everyone agrees this is the Punisher they think about, and it's great because it's simple. I think that's why this one, you know, really, really speaks to people, because it is so simple, and yet it's a version we have only ever scarcely got in live action media and other things. For whatever reason, they always want to put a little more on. They always want a little put a little extra sauce, a little extra armor, some bandoliers, something. They always kind of end up overthinking it, and I don't think you need to overthink it. I think they hit gold on this one because they knew, hey, keep it simple, stupid, and you'll create something iconic, which I feel they did. And yeah, you know, this is my personal favorite version of the suit too. I think this is S. This was destined for S from the very beginning, and in fact, I dare say this one has been very, very hard to top. Even in the modern era, they have only scarcely ever come close to topping this one. Now, in 2004, we got treated to Punisher the End. It's an even older Punisher, an even more ragged Punisher, a Punisher who, as the title would lead you to believe, is at the end of the world, and, you know, he has to decide, will he stay true to his punishment crusade? Will he, you know, end the lives of all, you know, the rich, evil one-percenters who led the world to destruction, or will he let them live knowing that they very well could be the only ones to rebuild the world? And again, hey, not to spoil how that story ends, but, I mean, you know, feels pretty topical, feels pretty timely for a story that was written in 2004. Again, not much to actually say about this version of the character. It's just Frank in, you know, what is basically prison attire and some goggles. That's pretty much it. This like the Vietnam suit, it's kind of like the absence of a costume, but I feel like we have to talk about it because the end is such an important story to the Punisher around this era. It is the first, but certainly not the last time we would see an even older man Punisher. I like it enough. It's pretty good. But again, I don't say it particularly blows my mind, and it's, you know, not one of those ones that is regularly referenced. I don't think it's a skin anywhere. I don't think people are dying to see this version adapted anywhere. I would give this one maybe like a C+, because the story itself is actually pretty important. And hey, while we're talking about Old Man Punisher, let's also talk about, hey, the brand new Marvel Knights version from Jimmy Palmiotti. This is another one where they said, hey, let's put some gray in Frank's hair. Let's put even more ages on him, more years, you know, more miles on his odometer. I actually quite enjoy this version. I never went back and finished the story, which is a shame, but I actually kind of like what they do with this one. It adds by subtraction, which I say a lot in artistic terms. I like that the skull is now, like, body armor. That the pieces of the skull are literally body armor on the shirt. That's new and fresh and exciting, and it does a good job, you know, differentiating that one from the other mainline Punisher book that's going on currently, and from a lot of the other designs, too. I would actually probably give that one a B. I would give the new Old Man Frank a B if I was to rank it properly. Well, you just know we had to get to the movies eventually, and yes, in 2004 we have the Thomas Jane Punisher movie, a movie that I certainly enjoyed at the time. I know it wasn't everything could be. I think, you know, this is one of those instances where Jane walked away with the character. Everyone agrees that he was definitely a very good version of Frank-Castle. If maybe the movie didn't, you know, quite live up to what, you know, what we wanted as comic readers. The costume itself is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. Granted, he does not wear this particular version of the suit for a very long time. This is like one scene in the movie where we get the long leather trench coat, we get the shirt, which has been a completely redesigned shirt. Now the skull is a gift from his son, and it got kind of fucked up in like the water and everything, so it's got this weirdo greenish tint to it. I understand why they did it. If you watch the behind the scenes of this movie, they show like a bunch of like early test footage where he is wearing a version of the skull that is much more traditional and much more comic accurate, where it's more stark white. And yeah, it didn't look great on film. It looked like a cosplay. I can see why they changed it, and I guess from this we can also kind of see why we never got that version of the skull on film in anything we've ever seen in live action. He also doesn't even wear the shirt for the big shootout at the end. He, you know, spray paints a piece of body armor, which that won't be the first or the last time we see spray painting the body armor. That becomes kind of a major thing going forward. I actually think the best version of this character and this suit is actually the one from the PS2 video game, which, goddamn, if there was ever something that needed a remaster or a re-release, it's that. I like this one enough for nostalgic reasons. It's not the best. I think Thomas Jane is underrated in his performance. I would give this one a solid B, probably even a B+, actually. You know, I say this one isn't actually one of the worst. I think, you know, time has been kind to the Thomas Jane version of this character, and Lord knows it's certainly better than the Dolph Lundgren version of the character before this, where, you know, he just had a leather jacket, a completely different origin story, and no skull shirt at all. I didn't even bother putting that one on here, because that's nothing. This is at least something. Alright, 2006, we got Punisher post-Civil War, during the Initiative. The big marching orders here seems to be, yo, what if the Punisher was really, really beefy? And he is. Oh, he's got the cut-off sleeves now. He's got more bandoliers and everything. He's got a different color pants, and he's wearing fingerless gloves now. Fingerless gloves. I've never liked this one, honestly. Again, not just because of the proportions, but because the suit felt so slapped together. You know, it felt like none of it really sang, none of it really complemented each other. Even the skull itself is, like, kind of small and kind of piddly, and again, it kind of has that, like, cosplay problem that we said before. Never particularly liked this era of Punisher War Journal. Not my favorite. It's exaggerated in all the wrong ways. Even the gun looks incredibly over the top and incredibly cosplay. Not a fan of this one. I would put this one in D, honestly. But you know what? Don't worry, because he actually had two costumes during this era, and the one he had after this, oh boy, let me tell you. You see, the second suit he had in this initiative era was, of course, the big Captain America tribute suit. And holy shit, I think he only rocked this for like an arc and some change, but man, what a cool take on this suit. And I know some people would be like, oh, the Punisher dressing up as Captain America, that's absolutely sacrilege. Yes, it is sacrilege, 100%. This is meant to slightly offend, and it is slightly offensive, but it's so cool in the way that it is. It also wouldn't be the first time Punisher dressed up like another hero. It's actually a shame that this suit is so short-lived the way it is. I always thought that someone else should maybe adopt this, or that Frank should have a reason to bring this one out of the closet again, because it is so cool and so out there and so exaggerated, but in the right way this time. You know, not in the wrong way that I thought before, and I'm pretty sure it's the same art team doing this one, but yeah, this is a fun one. This is one that lives in infamy for all the right reasons. Yeah, this one gets an A for me. This one is kind of sick. I kind of love this one. Man, Benjamin Percy should really find an excuse to bring this one back again for any reason, really. Now, after that, we jump ahead to 2008 with the Ray Stevenson, R.I.P., Punisher Warzone movie, and it offers up a very different take on the Punisher costume. He will indeed wear the trench coat in this movie, but his actual suit itself seems to try to be closer to, like, you know, the Kevlar bodysuit thing. He's got, like a military-style turtleneck, fingerless gloves again, a lot of, you know, combat accoutrement, and a big bulletproof vest with the actual neck covering there, which is like a real thing that actually exists, and a skull that is so undefined to the point of almost being invisible. And I feel like if the skull was a little louder and a little brighter, this one would probably be more well remembered. I do love the movie, though. The movie is great. The movie is silly and over the top and bloody and scatological. It is, you know, almost closer in tone to those Ennis Marvel Knight stories than, you know, it is Max, though it actually ends up taking quite a few of the best quotes from Max as well, and some of the characters too. Budiansky, a few other people, Soap, of course, are in this one as well. It's a shame we never got more with this movie. Loved Billy Russo in this one, loved their take on Jigsaw. I'm conflicted, because I want to give this more credit, because I really like the movie, even though the suit itself is a little muted and a little, you know, less than I would want it to be. I would say this one, maybe a B, like a C+ or a B-, you know, it has its place. Again, I think time has been kind to this one. Funny that they never tried to adapt this one into the books. I feel like, you know, if Frank rocked up wearing this or wearing something close to this, I don't think people would complain. I think it would be a good skin in something if they ever did, you know, another Punisher video game, which they definitely should, I think. But yeah, I've come around to this one in the years. I've come around to it, and this is a particularly good shot of it. It's a suit that works well for the project that it's doing, even if maybe it doesn't make sense everywhere else. Now, in 2009, we get more Punisher Max, but this isn't written by Garth Ennis. This is written by Jason Aaron. This will be his first, but not last time writing the Punisher. Steve Dillon is still on art, which means we basically get the same Punisher all over again. This is what makes doing a visual history of the Punisher so difficult, because a lot of the time, his suit is more or less the same, and this is another instance where it is more or less the same. I feel like I can't give it any extra credit, but I feel like I can't dock it anything either. It will give this one a C, I guess. You know, it's a perfect version of, you know, just down the line, you know? Now, 2009 brings with it Punisher Noir, another Elseworlds take on Frank-Castle, where the big addition is, oh, he's wearing a mask, and he's not wearing all black, and, is this another time where I finally get to talk about Punisher in a mask? I do not like Punisher in a mask. I never have. I think it defeats the purpose of a lot of the character, and that is that Frank is the sort of person who wouldn't hide his identity. I know the Noir universe is different, and there is a reason for it, but I think overall, what makes Frank so interesting as a character is that he is not afraid to show his face to his enemies, because he does not fear reprisal. He has no one to protect. He has nothing to lose. In fact, he welcomes reprisal. Please come after me as the Punisher, because it makes my job even easier. There's nothing particularly wrong with this version. There's nothing particularly wrong with this costume. Again, if it was a skin in a video game or something, I would definitely probably try and unlock it. But it's far from my favorite. I would give this one probably a D, is what I would give it. Again, nothing particularly wrong with it. You still technically passed, but still, eh. Now in 2010, they take a massive creative swing. Frank is killed by Daken and rebuilt and resurrected as Franken-Castle. Basically his own little take on Hellboy. What if Punisher hunted monsters for a little bit? This also starts a trend that would probably keep going all throughout Punisher's history, and that is that they would completely shake up his status quo, do something different, and fans en masse would completely hate it and completely turn against it and say that it's the worst thing ever and that Marvel has lost their way and that, you know, this is a slap in the face. And yet they will reverse it, and then as time goes on, people will come back and ultimately be softened to this version of the character and be softened to this story because eventually the status quo was returned to like it always is. And I think the worm has finally turned, and I think people have finally admitted, yeah, okay, Franken-Castle is actually pretty freaking cool. For the story they're telling, it is pretty sick. I mean, look at him. He's Frankenstein. He's got swords. He's got guns. He can do so much more punishing, you know, as a living dead, you know, man-machine hybrid. And yeah, I particularly like this image. I am not made of stone. I think this is pretty cool. I like that the skull is even more of the chest now with the tubes and everything, and in fact, his face is stark white, so he looks even more skeletal than he ever has before. I would give this one a solid B, maybe even a B+ on a good day. I think this one is fun, and it is living on his skins, isn't it? Isn't this in Marvel Rivals? Isn't this one you can do now? So I think time vindicated Franken-Castle in a big way. Now, 2012, we got another pretty big creative swing. We get the eye patch version of the Punisher, what they sometimes call the Big Boss version of the Punisher. And man, I had no idea how beloved this version of the character actually was. In fact, it's a version that you can kind of see, when you look at this, you can kind of see the face of what will eventually be John Bernthal, right? You can kind of see the vision here for it. And yeah, as time goes on, I think that run, particularly, that was the Greg Rucka run, I believe. I think people really respect that run and what was done with the character. The eye patch is striking. It's something different we haven't seen before. He is a more armored, more paramilitary take on the character, but it is in a believable way where you think, like, yeah, if a dude was doing urban warfare, he would probably do it like this. This is also probably one of the biggest reworkings of the skull they've ever actually done. Again, it's very, you know, spray painty. It's very streaky. It looks like something he just kind of put on there before he went off to a mission. And yeah, I think it looks pretty good. It gives it its own unique flavor, gives it its own place and time. And hey, there's actually a couple variations of this version. This isn't even my favorite version of the suit. My favorite version of this suit is actually the stark white Arctic Attack Punisher, where he has black spray paint on an all-white suit. I'm shocked they don't actually inverse Punisher's color scheme that much, because Punisher in all white, I think, actually looks super, super cool. I would actually put the white version in A tier. In fact, you know, they probably both belong in A tier. I think some people would say the black eye patch probably belongs in S tier itself. But yeah, I would put these very high up. Honestly, I would. I think these are really good. I think this is probably one of the better redesigns and reimaginings we ever had. It didn't play it safe. It didn't reinvent the wheel, but it did definitely move things into some exciting new directions, and I can see why this era and these suits are so particularly well loved. Now, 2012, we get the all-red Thunderbolt, the all-anti-hero version of the team here, which, of course, featured Frank. And, yeah, I mean, talk about not reinventing the wheel. This one was literally like, hey, what if we just make his skull red instead of white? And also, this book had terrible art, by the way. This cover I've got here is probably the best Punisher ever looked in here. And here we can very clearly see, yes, the skull is actually just a piece of armor now over what looks to be even more of like a black bodysuit, almost like a black biker suit or something. You don't really get this in the book itself. That was one of the biggest problems of this era of Thunderbolts, just really bad slapdash corner cutting art. This is the best this suit ever looked, and I would still still probably only put it at a C, maybe even a C minus, and that's me being nice, and it's not even the best looking version of this suit. The best looking version of this suit is, again, probably the Marvel Rivals version of this costume, which the Marvel Rivals version already does a lot different anyway, by giving, you know, Punisher some space-age looking armor there, and some face paint, but, I mean, making that red looked great. Making this look red, Now, after that, we come to 2014 and the very, very short-lived Nathan Edmondson run. Remember Nathan Edmondson, everyone? He was like a huge deal at Marvel for like a split second. They were treating him like the guy, like the second coming. He had this. He had a big Black Widow run at the time. He wrote some other stuff and then just kind of flamed out in the industry. Maybe he was stealing. Maybe he was abusing people behind the scene. Maybe he was part of, you know, some rather unfortunate think tanks. But yeah, he kind of disappeared. This was a very weird era of the Punisher, too. If you remember, they moved him out of New York and moved him to LA. He started looking a lot more like Snake Plissken. He grew his hair long. But really, the big addition to the costume in this era is Edmondson said, hey, what if he wore, like, a hood? What if he wore, like, a mask and was even more paramilitary? And I think this one is forgotten for a reason, because as I said before, I think masks are antithetical to the Punisher as a character, and when you just make him look like a G.I. Joe character, when you just make him look like Soldier Man, he ends up looking even more generic, and you divorce him from the things that actually make him cool and exciting and, you know, make people want to read him. But as I said, this was a blink and you'll miss it era. I'm sure some people forget this version of the character even existed at all. Never a favorite version of mine. I don't think this one has stood the test of time at all. I feel very comfortable putting this one at D. Hell, I almost feel like we gotta put something at F. I almost feel like this should go to F just because we can say, hey, look, we threw something at F. But yeah, D or F is where I would put this one. Definitely probably my least favorite that we're going to talk about. Then comes 2016, and we, of course, have our Netflix Punisher. Yeah, Jon Bernthal, who never actually wore this costume all that much over the 2 seasons and the Daredevil show he was in, which is a crying shame, because it actually looks pretty cool. I like what they're doing with it. It's just, hey, let's do the black bodysuit, let's do the spray paint, and, you know, let's have it look, you know, real and, you know, like something that you could run into on the street. And yeah, it's good, it's affecting. It's not my favorite, though. This one I would probably end up putting at like a B, maybe even like a C+, but it's the one they do after in Born Again. Now this is the one. This is the one that iterates on everything that comes before. I like that it's even kind of patchier, the actual white spray paint. I like that he's clearly wearing a tactical vest. I like that he's got the belt that looks a lot closer to the belt that he wears in the comics. Even just a small decision that they've chosen to do with Bernthal in this one, in that he's rolled up his sleeves. Normally you don't see Frank's forearms all that often, but here I think it actually really works and really, you know, sells the ferocity of his character. I also like that, you know, sometimes the Punisher logo almost looks like a little off-center, because it looks like something that a crazy man put together, you know, in a back room. So, you know, when you see that in the dead of the night, you better run and you better watch out. This one, the Born Again suit, I would probably give A tier. I would say this is probably the best the suit has looked in live action, and here's hoping, you know, when we get one last kill, they iterate on it again, and it looks even better. There's a great figure of this character as well, of this version of the character that I've had in my cart for a while, but just cannot press buy on because I don't know where I would put it in my office. But I would say, as far as live action versions of the Punisher costume go, this one's going to be hard to beat for a minute. Now, 2016 in the comics, we get Punisher trying out the War Machine costume in the Matthew Rosenberg run, which is another instance of fans hated this so much and rejected this super hard that I think they never actually read the run itself, which is a shame because I thought it was actually a very good story. It's only 2 arcs. It's actually pretty short. In fact, I believe it's collected now as Punisher Legacy. They don't even consider this part of Rosenberg's Punisher series that he would do after this, which was much more traditional Frank, even though they are literally the same story, even though you have to read both to understand it. This is a better version of the costume from the actual pages of the book itself. I feel like some people saw an early cover, an early concept art of Frank as War Machine, and they, again, hated it out of hand to the point that they refused to actually read it and see what was going on. I think it's awesome. I thought it was awesome then. I think it's awesome now. This this is maybe why I'm different than a lot of Punisher fans and a lot of comic book fans, and that, you know, I don't have knee-jerk reactions all the time. When I see something cool, I can go, oh, that's really cool. And he didn't stay in it forever. He stayed in it for, you know, the purposes of the story is what he did. And it's a good story, and people should go back and revisit it. In fact, hey, I'm probably going to be making a supercut of this for Joel Reed's Comics, my backup channel, so, you know, keep an eye out for that in the future. I think it looks great. I would give this one like a B+. Yeah, that's how much I like this one. I think this one is actually genuinely really cool. Now, 2018 for the Punisher, we get Cosmic Ghost Rider, which I almost didn't put in here because he's not Cosmic Frank-Castle, he's not Cosmic Punisher, he's Cosmic Ghost Rider, even though they are technically the same guy, and even though there is, like, a little reference in the actual suit itself, and that is clearly the Punisher skull he's wearing. That was part of a big Donny Cates reveal story. I know Marvel was way into this character when they were first revealed in Thanos Wins, and the character kind of kept coming back, and now actually kind of has their own, like, lore and everything, so I feel like the character kind of needs his flowers for that and that alone. Would it be crazy to put this one in A tier? Would this be crazy to say, you know, as far as alternate Punishers go, this is one that got over with the fans, that people like? It's definitely one of the most powerful versions of the character. Would I be nuts for putting this one in A tier? For everything this character has done and gone through. I know we haven't seen the character in a bit, which is a shame, but yeah, I would put it there. Maybe I'm out of my mind. I'm sure people will tell me in the comments I'm out of my mind for thinking this character should be an A tier, but there you go. I can't hide it. I think this looks awesome, and I'm not afraid to say I think this looks awesome. Now, at the end of that Rosenberg series, Frank falls off a building and then is gone for a very long amount of time until 2022 when Jason Aaron returns to the book to give us Punisher the High Slayer, Punisher the Leader of Hand, and oh man, the pissing and moaning that was had about this series, and oh my god, the people who lost their minds about this book and clearly did not read it, and is such a shame because literally any question you had and any concern you might have had was answered in the pages of that story, and they ended up telling a pretty cool fucking story here too about the Punisher needing to, you know, come face to face with his wife and his sins, and, you know, the whole reason that he is the Punisher in the first place. And I think people didn't like that because it, you know, made them question maybe some of their own nihilism that they have, where, you know, the book said, hey, this guy who you think is so cool, maybe he's not that cool. Maybe he's actually a little sick in the head, because let's face it, Punisher has always been a little sick in the head, and that's why, you know, stuff like Marvel Knights and Max were so well received, because they were adult takes on the material. The suit itself, again, I think is cool. I think turning the skull into an Oni is awesome. I think giving him swords and actually telling a story about how he needed to learn to fight with swords after being a gun guy for so long, I think that's awesome. Again, I wasn't afraid at the time to say it. I wasn't afraid to say it now. I think Ninja Samurai Frank-Castle is really cool. Then he gets a bunch of demon powers, and that's cool too. I hope people have, you know, softened on this story now, because once again, people turned on this story right when they saw the cover, and they're like, oh, well, it's just gonna be this way forever, huh? No, it's not. You have Benjamin Percy now. Punisher is back to the status quo. The status quo will always be returned to. It's okay to like things. It's okay to read things and make up your mind for yourself. I think this one is great. Again, I would put this one in B tier. I think this is a really solid redesign, and again, if they ever do a video game, if they ever do, you know, some sort of big collection, this one would definitely need to be referenced there somehow. In fact, I'm shocked this one never got a figure. I'm actually shocked this one never got a figure, because this one feels so destined to be a killer figure. And yeah, that's basically all the mainline ones for Punisher redesigns. I got, you know, some kind of lightning round ones here. I know the video's running long already, so I might cut these out, I might not. But here's just some quick ones. Hey, Billy Russo as Punisher from, I think, Suicide Run. I'm a big fan of villain decides to dress up like the hero and put their own spin on the costume. It's just the Punisher skull logo, but it has barbed wire all over it. I would say that gets at least a C. Ooh, Carlos Cruz, one of the first guys to take on the Punisher identity for himself. In fact, I think Carlos Cruz is even in Punisher Warzone for a minute. I know a lot of people think this is great. I think this is silly. I think this is all the wrong types of 90s extremeness. I would give this one a C, maybe even a D. I think the helmet is really dumb. I don't like that it kind of clashes the white and the black together, and the fact that he has the skull logo and a skull helmet. That's putting a hat on a hat. Not a fan of that. Never like that. I'm sure some people are nostalgic for this character, but it feels like no one is rushing to bring this character back. Another one. Oh, hey, Joe Garrison, the brief 4-issue fill-in Punisher, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Gravedigger. Again, I feel like I'm the only one who actually gave this story the time of day. They basically said, hey, what if there was a Punisher who was an older, more stable guy who could play with others? I thought they had a great reveal as to why he is wearing a Punisher skull, because it's not a Punisher skull. It's actually just a series of S.H.I.E.L.D. LEDs that when he puts his coat on, it looks like a Punisher skull. He never had any intention of being the Punisher in the story, and I think that's hilarious, and I think that's clever writing. I would give him at least a C. In fact, I hope Benjamin Percy works him back in, because who wouldn't love to see a Punisher versus Punisher storyline? What else do we got going on here? Ooh, Outlaw, yeah, Punisher's British counterpart here. Always thought his outfit was fun. I like that he has a beard. I like that, you know, he's got the green camo pants and kind of an off-yellow skull that's also a crossbow. Fun character. They should really do more with him. They should at least put him on a team. Again, the fact that you can actually wear a flat cap and make it part of your costume and not have it be silly. Yeah, I would probably put him in C tier. He's not Frank, but he has a very cool costume that, again, if it showed up in a video game, I think people would be really excited about it. Rachel Cole Alves, basically the in-canon Lady Punisher. There was a Max version of a lady who put on the Punisher skull, but this one is canon. She actually came back for the Matthew Rosenberg Thunderbolt storyline he told near the end of his run. Fun character. Her suit is basically just a version of Frank's suit, which I already think I put in A tier. Which I guess means I need to put hers there too, because it's literally just the same suit on a woman. What else do we have here? Oh, speaking of there's actually more than one Lady Punisher as well, because there's also Lynn Michaels, I believe her name was, from back in the day. Her suit's a little different because her skull is actually a little different, and she's got long flowing blonde hair, which contrasts to the whole black and white and everything. I kind of like this suit too, and I think this character actually did come back in 2011, so someone definitely liked this character. I would probably put her in B tier. It's not too bad. It is kind of just like a Lady Venom. It is like we just took the costume that worked and put it on a pretty lady, but you know what, I'm not made of stone, man. You know what, I'm pretty easygoing. And then, of course, I think the last one we can talk about, too, is 2010. There was a Punisher for Ronin. Hey, what if Punisher was a samurai, but if he was also still a gun guy? It works. It works in a way that you wouldn't expect. It's pretty fun. Again, I'm a sucker for, you know, period versions of stories. I love Cowboy Punisher, so of course I love Samurai Punisher as well, too. I would also probably put this one in B tier overall, because I think this one is that good. And yeah, that's basically all the costumes, everyone. That's a whole history. I know I missed some multiversal ones, I've missed some video game ones here and there, but I think this is a pretty comprehensive visual history for the Punisher. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you had some fun here. I know this one was a long one. I hope you're having a good Friday. I hope you read something good. I hope you'll join me again next week when we end up doing something completely different. So until then, everyone, this has been Cape Joel. Bye-bye.